Welcome back to the Caffeinated Cruiser. I am JD. We're going to be talking about the brand new Royal Enfield Bear 650. I am super excited about this bike, and I can't wait to tell you why. So now they have the Continental, the Interceptor, the Shotgun, the Classic, and am I forgetting anything? I think it's just the Bear. I think it's those 5 if I counted right. All built on the Royal Enfield 650cc parallel twin platform. That engine configuration, honestly, it's pretty dang slow. It is not terribly exciting, and I'm not going to lie to you and say that it is. But it does some things really well. 1, it's kind of torquey, which is cool. 2, it sounds really freaking good. And 3, it really feels like a retro bike. It is a retro bike, and it sounds like one, and it's kind of, I think it's what people want when they start looking at retro bikes. It is a modern bike with modern reliability, but with the classic looks, charms, and sound of an old bike. And I think that's really cool. And it's weird because on one hand, I'm sort of against big adventure bikes, and I really think people should be on bikes in that 650 to 800cc and kind of really be more sport tours unless you're really going to take them off-road. But yet, I give scramblers a pass. I don't know why. I just think they're so cool, and I think specifically Royal Enfield does an amazing job at making really attractive motorcycles. I used to hate them. I used to make fun of them all the time. Again, probably another influence of Yami Noob. One of my buddies who I ride with, he reminds me quite often of how much I used to make fun of Royal Enfields anytime I saw them. But at this point, I'm a fan, and I think it's probably because I'm pretty poor. I can't afford fancy new bikes, and the closest ones I can afford are going to be something like a Royal Enfield or a CF Moto, because they're making bikes super, super competitively priced, and I don't know, they hit that sweet spot. They've got enough of everything, and they're, I guess, more raw motorcycles. They are just a motorcycle. Or sickle, that sounds weird. They are just a motorcycle, and that's awesome. And I think, early on when I first started riding, I thought that having Bluetooth systems and GPS and, TFTs and all that stuff is really cool. And now, the longer I've ridden, the more I really like older bikes that are simpler. They're simpler to work on, oftentimes simpler to maintain. So that being said, let's talk a little bit more about this bike. To be honest, there's not a ton to say about it. As far as I can tell, it is basically the Continental, which is what it's called here in the U.S. I think it's called something different overseas, but it's basically a Continental 650 with maybe slightly taller handlebars and a retro-styled seat, flat bench seat, retro paintwork, and the number plates on the side of the bike. And then it has high fenders as well, and then semi-knobbly tires. It reminds me actually a lot of my Husqvarna Svartfällen 701, but obviously at $2,000 or $3,000 less, which is really sweet. So I mentioned that I don't necessarily want bikes to have TFT displays. This one does have one, but I think this might be this is the best, this is the most well done, this is the bestest of all the TFTs, retro TFT displays that I've seen on any bike. I think this is perfect. When you look at it, it's all encapsulated. It's all encapsulated in a singular round dash or a round TFT screen, and it looks so good. The silver bezel looked really good that I saw. I obviously haven't used this. I don't know how easy it is to navigate, but I think if you're going to put a TFT on a retro bike, and a bike that is purposely retro, make it look like this. That is perfect. I can't think of another bike out there that is supposed to be a retro in this vein that is that attractive looking. So yeah, great work, Royal Enfield, on that. It's going to have some knobby tires on it. It has a low slung underbelly exhaust, so according to the press release, they said something along the lines of this is for light off-roading, and I think that's probably accurate. Now that being said, the 2 bikes that I've had that maybe are the closest to this in riding, positioning and off-road ability would be my current V-Strom 650 or my Husqvarna Sparkfilin 701. And both of those bikes, I tend to take random little off-roads or take down little trails that I find more than any other bikes I've ever owned. So whatever they're doing with this, it works. It's a playful bike that's entertaining, and people, at least people like me, are going to be a lot more likely to try to take it off-road just because it feels cool. It feels fun, and it doesn't, I guess, feel like you're going to break it if you go, 10 miles an hour on some back road. So why do I give this bike a pass when a lot of times I make fun of adventure bikes, or when I really think that most adventure bikes should be sport tours? I guess it's just, honestly, it plucks at your heartstrings. It is what I think of when I think of motorcycling. It is, this life that I never experienced back in maybe the 60s and 70s, before all the technology, and when people, when there was a huge, fan base around motorcycling, and all these manufacturers were competing to make the best bike, or the cheapest bike, or the most popular bike. And people were doing things with them like scrambling them. They were the original dirt bikes. It was people doing hill climbs and things like that on regular old street bikes and putting on knobby tires and raising up the exhaust and, pulling things off to make them lighter. And little by little, they became dirt bikes. And, I didn't obviously live that experience. I'm only 29 years old, and I'm I hate to say it, in a time in motorcycling where it might not exist for a whole lot longer with modern emission laws and what's coming out from different governing agencies. And a lot of people in my generation grew up, especially here in the U.S., just thinking that motorcycles are always a death machine and anyone who gets on them is just going to combust immediately. And, I've seen over the last couple of years, especially during COVID, I did at least anecdotally feel like there was a resurgence of motorcycles. I did feel like I saw a lot more out on the road. More of my friends started riding, but at the same time, here in the U.S., bikes are a hobby. They really are for enthusiasts, and people don't see them as real transportation anymore. Now, I personally have been dailying my V-Strom 650, even here in October in Michigan when it's been, about 30 degrees in the morning. I've been riding this to work, and I've been loving it. I don't know. I like riding motorcycles more than I like driving cars, so I sold my car and committed to this being my daily commuter. And we'll see how that goes in the winter, but right now it's going all right, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Motorcycling here in the U.S. at least, the people who are really drawn to it and who are kind of fanatical about it, I think we all kind of have this desire to go back in time when it was, this exciting, crazy passion, and people were just doing crazy things with motorcycling. And, it seems like every week or every year, manufacturers were coming out with newer and exciting and, more technologically advanced motorcycles. And there was this just passion around it that people had. At least that's what it feels like. When I watch or listen to people talk about motorcycling from the 60s and 70s, that's how it feels when I hear about it. In my head, it's this culture-wide event that everyone's obsessed with it, whether it's the chopper guys, custom motorcycles, whether it's scramblers, it's off-roading, it's dirt biking becoming a thing, adventure bikes becoming a thing. It's Harley, it's Indian, it's Triumph, it's the Japanese manufacturers making bikes that are finally capturing the American public's interest and, being able to compete with Harley and Indian. And when I look at this Royal Enfield, I guess that's what comes to my mind. It brings up those feelings in me. It's this nostalgic feeling for something that I never personally experienced, but I really, really wish I had. And the colorways that this bike is coming out with, the details around it, in one sense, it might be the laziest way to do a scrambler. Why did it take Royal Enfield this long to put, high mud guards and a flat seat on a Continental? Who knows? But at the same time, they brought one to the market that I think is just amazing looking. So I guess that's the biggest part of my feelings on it. It really comes down to this just desire for something that once was that I'll never get to experience, and just a love for motorcycling. And even though Royal Enfield was a brand I used to mock, I'm now a big fan because they're bringing bikes to the market at such a great price. You can't help but notice them. And I've only ridden the Continental. I only rode one for maybe 5 miles or so, but I got to experience it. And when I got on that bike, it didn't feel like a toy. 650cc bikes are often considered toys here in the U.S., or they're considered entry-level bikes, beginner bikes. But when I rode that, it felt fun. It felt like it had character, and it really made me start to appreciate that engine a little bit more. Above 65 miles per hour, there definitely wasn't a lot left. It was kind of almost capped out. There was a lot more power to roll on with, but up to that point, it was really fun and really engaging, and I felt cool riding that bike. So I would say don't sleep on this bike because it only makes 48 horsepower or whatnot. Let's compare it quickly to the Triumph Scrambler 400. Realistically, these are going to come in at somewhat similar price ranges. I think they'll probably be somewhere around $1,000 or so between them, maybe less. So that being said, which one do you get? I guess if it's me, it's my money, I'm going to pick up the Royal Enfield. And the reason, again, why for that is when I sat on those bikes before, they felt like a full-size bike. Sitting on it and handling it and feeling it, I didn't feel like I was riding a toy or a small bike or a beginner bike. It felt like a full-fledged big bike. I have not ridden the Triumph Scrambler 400, but I have seen them in the dealerships. I've sat on them. They're super lightweight. They're very, very narrow. They're very skinny bikes to sit on. And I would say if you are a true beginner and you've never ridden a bike before, especially if you are, under maybe 5'10" and don't weigh more than 160 pounds, go for that Triumph Scrambler because that weight is going to feel a lot nicer. It's not going to be as hard to manage. But on the other hand, if you are more of an experienced rider and you got miles under your belt, I think you're going to like the Royal Enfield better because it's going to feel like a big bike. It's going to feel like a slow big bike, but a big bike nonetheless. I don't really think there's real competition to this. Maybe you could look at something like the Kawasaki, the Z650? Blanking on what it's called. Basically the Retro 650 model. That bike though is way too expensive for what it is. I cannot believe Kawasaki wants 10 grand for it here in the US. That engine is a dog and it doesn't sound good and it only looks good from basically the waist up. So yeah, I don't know. I'd say ignore that bike. There's a lot of other smaller manufacturers out there that have kind of interesting bikes in this segment, but I don't think any of them truly are competitors to this because they're so niche. I think that pretty much covers the extent of my thoughts on this bike. I'm excited for it though. I think it's really, really cool, and I hope it comes to US quickly. The shotgun took forever to get here, and I think the shotgun's a very cool bike. I don't know. I just like what Royal Enfield's doing. I've heard there's rumors that they might come out with an 800cc Continental or something in that range in the near future, and I think that'd be really cool. I think there definitely is a market for that, and if they can still price it the way they price the rest of their bikes, I think it would sell super well, even if it only makes, again, 65 horsepower or something like that. But for everyday riding, for going to work, for commuting, for just going on rips, in the country, or going cruising around downtown like I am tonight, I think 650 cc's, 48 horsepower, give or take, I think that's plenty. I don't know. I think the colors are sweet. I think it looks cool. It'll sound cool. There are some people who will want to take this off-road, and again, how it's set up right now, is that great for that? No, probably not. But if you were able to get a high exhaust on it and a skid plate and maybe a little bit taller suspension, this would be such a sweet dirt bike, a very heavy dirt bike, but it would be very, very cool. So I hope some people do that. I would love to see them. I think that about wraps it up. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. Feel free to subscribe if you thought this was entertaining. Ride safe. Keep two wheels down. Peace out.